It's Wednesday, December 16th. And on Monday, Joe Biden was confirmed as the president-elect when all of the states announced publicly the electoral votes in each of their states. And Joe Biden got his 306 votes, more than the 270 needed to become formally the president-elect. Now, there's been a raging battle in the last couple of years about the effectiveness of the Electoral College. There are many that want to do away with it because of several different elections, and they want a strict majority popular vote. Now, I tell you the truth, I am in favor of the Electoral College. I would not want a strict majority electoral votes, because if that happened, then the more populous states would win every time. And that is not what the foundation of this country was all about. In this country, we allowed a minority to have a say. And it's true over recent times, this say has been upsetting to many because of the Electoral College. But you know, if you look across our 200 and some odd years of existence, it's only happened 5 times, so it's not like it's a permanent trend or anything that the Electoral College is always going to come out against the majority vote. As I said, it's only happened 5 times. But it's worth looking at and perhaps restructuring it a little bit. Right now, in the Electoral College, all the votes in a state, in at least 48 states anyhow, go to the person who had the majority of the votes in that state. So you could win the state by 2 or 3 votes, and then you would get all the electoral votes. And so if I was going to make a modification, I would modify that to apportioning the electoral votes by the distribution of votes within that state. But that's the only thing I could think of that would make any real sense at all to me. I'm in favor of the minorities having a say. Now, if you take a look at this past election and probably the last 20 or 30 elections, although it's not been stated this way many times, the elections in this country really don't include 50 states. Because when you look at elections, it turns out that there are red states and blue states, and then there are purple states. And the purple states are states that can go either way in any election, as we have seen over the last 2 elections. And these purple states have gotten a name for themselves called the battleground states. And the presidential candidates have realized, except in the case of Hillary Clinton, have realized that you got to win the battleground states. You don't necessarily have to campaign anyplace else. Because in this country, 40 or 41 of the 50 states are a lock for one party or another. It's the battleground states you have to win. And that was proven in this election as Biden went out and won those battleground states. And in the previous election, Donald Trump won those battleground states. And they got those electoral votes, right? In the case of Biden, he also got the whole popular vote. So it's strange that we're worried about the Electoral College and everything when the elections in this country are turned by a few states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, battleground states. You have to do well in the battleground states. So all this talk about the Electoral College doesn't really make that much sense when you realize that this country's government leadership is really controlled by 9 states. I don't know what we can do about that. I don't know how you fix an inherent problem like that. Maybe a proportional distribution of the Electoral College would fix that problem. But right now, that's what we're confronted with. And as we've seen in this election, states have a lot of control over the electoral process. And the fact that they all have their own rules. And that's what makes states an important political entity, because they govern their own elections. No two states in this country handle their elections exactly the same way. And that was made clear in some of the ridiculous actions that took place after this election, like the Attorney General of Texas suing because 4 battleground states didn't behave like he wanted them to, or the fact that certain states will wait longer than others to count the votes, and some states won't start counting the votes until Election Day, even though they've got the ballots in their hand, say 2 weeks before, because of the mail-in voting. So states have a lot more control in the outcome of these elections than I believe that I realized up to the point of this election. Because just the mere fact that they could set their own calendar or set the way they were going to handle mail-in ballots, or whether they were even going to allow to have mail-in ballots, all of those things can have a monumental effect on how an election goes. And then some states have ridiculous rules. Like in the Dakotas, they want people to have a street address. And the reason they did that was because the Native Americans in that state live on a reservation, and they don't have streets in the reservation. And they don't have street addresses. They have post office boxes. So in a way, this was disenfranchising a large group of people from voting. And that's the other thing states can do. Since the rules for who is a legitimate, eligible voter changes from state to state, there's no consistency in that. It's all governed by the state. So there's a lot of work that could be done in straightening out the Electoral College and what it means, and elections in general and what they mean and how they're executed. There ought to be some consistency between the states in at least how they decide who's an eligible voter. Timetables could be different based upon the population in the state and things like that. But eligible voters should be the same, eligible voters. So I leave you with that, and I'll see you in the morning. Bye.